The Ministry of Water and Sanitation, the city of Tshwane and Water have found a way to resolve the water issues in the city. Now, some parts of Tshwane were without water, and Water has said also Tshwane residents are using a lot more water as compared to the global average. So does this mean that the water issues have been resolved? Let's get more details now and speak to Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, David Mahlobo. Thank you so much, Deputy Minister, for your time. So does this mean then that some of the parts that have been without water in the city of Tshwane now have water and the issues have been resolved?
The first thing that has happened is that as a ministry, we are very concerned that the spread between the city of Tshwane and Water has stopped because it was diverting them from the focus of providing water and understanding the system. Therefore, our intervention, allowing them to work together to put up technical teams. And we are very pleased that for the first time that the technical teams are working together from Sunday, yesterday they were working together. It does not necessarily mean, Mangete, that the water situation has been resolved, because the system for the water in Tshwane must be managed in totality. What does it mean? It means that they needed to keep the range in terms of storage between 60 to 70% in their reservoirs. And they have been struggling to do that for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is the issues of load shedding, but at the very same time is the inadequacy of the secondary reservoirs in Tshwane, where the population has grown, the infrastructure has not been increased. As we speak, there are 4 reservoirs that are below 60%, and they are affecting the areas of Soshanguve and Mabopane. And the teams of Water and the teams of Tshwane, they are working together to do the balancing in such a way that the reservoirs that are in a healthy state, they are able to shift the movement of the water from those reservoirs into these other reservoirs. And they are starting to share the same information in their telemetric system so that the technical teams can respond on timeless basis. But for them to succeed, they will need the communities to play their part, Bongo.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to the communities in just a moment, because that's also another layer of concern here. But let's stay with what you're saying, because the issue of the population and the people who are, now rapidly living in Tshwane, we do know over the years has grown. So will there be additional allocation to the city?
What has happened is that from the bulk system, Bongo, right now, additional water has been made available from 2 systems, from Water. Additional 210 million liters per day from the Vlakfontein, Ekurhuleni, is supporting Tshwane, the other areas in Gauteng. Last week on Friday, we added 150 megaliters, which is 150 million more.
Yeah.
But what we're discussing with the municipalities now is to say, now that you have more water, do you have sufficient storage? And the answer is that most of these municipalities, they are in planned investment, and we are supporting them as national government, that they build more secondary systems, like secondary reservoirs. But in the immediate, one of the matters they must address, Bongiwe, they lose a lot of water. In Tshwane, as an example, they are losing 32%. In other words, for every 100 million liters we give, 32 million liters will go to the ground on the basis of water losses or non-revenue water, Ekurhuleni, Gauteng, Mfuleni, and others. That's the matter that we need to deal with. But they must also be in a position to manage the issues of the demand in terms of the system when there's a peak. When there is a high levels of temperature like we have in the last 2 days, the consumption levels are very high. And we need to be able to work with citizens to say gardening shouldn't be done, issues of the swimming pools and so forth, let them use the water wisely, but at the very same time, improve communication with citizens. Because if we don't communicate and address that, the problem that they see will be addressed. One of the problems in Tshwane is also the interference with the system. There is vandalism affecting the issues of the valves there, and including the issues of the stealing of the power generation equipment. And that team of ours are also monitoring those particular issues so that even if there's a cable theft, they are able to replace it on time.
Yeah.
But Tshwane must work on reservoirs and more pumps so that at least this additional water can add value into the system.
And I hope one day we talk about that, because that issue of storage is a huge one. And as you've addressed the issue of residents, because that's another layer. You know, residents need to really adhere to some of the regulations here. And I wonder how the city will then begin to enforce this. Is something we'll need to speak to them about. But as we wrap up our conversation, I want us to also look at another issue. And you were heavily involved on this one when it comes to resolving it. And that's around the Hammanskraal water crisis. And I remember at some point, there were tests that were trying to be done in order to ensure that the source of the contamination is identified and thus isolated. And I wonder, what is the latest on that water crisis in Hammanskraal?
The issues is that the work between the city of Tshwane, ourselves, working with the DBSA and including Mahalis, as it was announced by Minister Mkhunu, that particular program proceeds. And we are very confident that we'll be able to address the issues of Rooiwal, including the issues of a temporal package plant, so that people can be able to drink water from the taps. But in the meantime, the water cutting still proceeds. That investigation by the Water Research Commission was done, and there were areas of contamination where the strain for the virus, the bacteria related to this was discovered, but they could not conclusively say that the matter that caused the cholera was related to that. But the issues of contamination around that particular area, including groundwater, is a matter that we need to engage on rehabilitation and ensure that people receive water from the taps, and that water is of good quality.